camera rolling here.
Are you going to be watching yourself?
I know, it's going to be strange, but I need to practice. I need to get used to seeing how ridiculous I look on screen.
Dude, it's not something you can get used to.
Wait, why do you want to look at yourself?
I really don't want to look at myself, but I don't want you guys to look at me and be even more distracted by the mini-me on the screen. Like I'll be trying to teach you something, and then mini-me there will be... You'll be like picturing the chipmunk voice saying, "Yeah, do what he says." You'll be like... And then that serious point I'm making about, I don't know, the eternal salvation of your friend will be lost because you're too busy thinking about chipmunk versions of myself. So,
Dude,
can't have
Seth. I bet the little version of you is very insightful, though.
that.
It has a lot less going on in its head.
Well, a lot less going on, but yet he knows everything I'm going to say.
Oh, fair
He
enough.
always says it. It's weird.
He says it right before
There he
you with a
is.
really squeaky voice.
All right, so quiz time.
What's this guy? When I am with you, there's...
I gotta pull up my info. I have not graded you guys' devotions yet, so I need to make sure I do that.
Thanks for doing that.
But I've got them, so thank you for turning those in.
That's all that matters.
All right, you got your stuff hidden, papers out, etc., etc. Got some interesting stuff to cover today.
Unfortunately for you, I'm a palm reader, so I can just tell the answers that way.
Wow, you gifted fellow. Okay, quiz over chapters 25 through 28.
No.
No?
Uh-uh.
Wait, what quiz? What is the quiz over?
Oh, you're right.
Okay, good.
I'm full, sorry.
Okay, good.
Thinking of our reading.
We're not covering 25 through
Right.
28. No, but quiz is over last week's stuff. You scared me for a minute. I'm like, wait.
Scared me
yeah.
too.
All right, number one.
Alright.
True or false?
Oh, these are my favorite.
You got your stuff put away. I can't really see because you are buried in a mountain of stuff. Okay, true or false? Ammon, Moab, Edom, and Philistia are all rebuked by Ezekiel.
Say those just again for me, please.
Ammon, Moab, Edom, and Philistia are all rebuked by Ezekiel the prophet, or by God through Ezekiel, I could say. Is that true or false? So good. Question 2. True or false? Mount Seir, that's S-E-I-R, Mount Seir occupied both Moab and Edom, but it was usually used in reference to Edom. True or false? Mount Seir occupied both Moab and Ammon, but it was usually used in reference to... I'm sorry, did I say Ammon? I meant to say Edom. Did I say Ammon? All right, I don't know if I did it right.
You said Edom. the
Okay,
first
good.
time.
True or false? Mount Seir occupied both Moab and Edom, but it was usually used in reference to Edom. Is that true or is that false? It's tough sometimes. I expect you to pay such good attention to me that a little one-liner I throw out, I just expect you to remember it.
Alright.
But I think you will. I think you can do this.
We have 50-50, so it's alright.
And then 3. The Edomites were descendants of whom? Question 3. The Edomites were descendants of whom? If you can think back to any of that, Obadiah stuff, that might help you remember all the words to Edom. But the Edomites, who were they descendants of? Question 4. What two nations are responsible for the downfall of Tyre? T-Y-R-E. Which two nations are responsible for the downfall of Tyre? One attacked the mainland, laid siege to it for about 13 years, and the other, in a matter of months, got out to the coastal, to the fortress city just off into the water a bit, in the island, and got it. So what two nations did that? Just like God said would happen. You guys ready? Let's move on. Okie dokie. Question 5. The city of Tyre is pictured as, okay, multiple choice. A, ship. B, mighty horse. C, great tree. D, none of these. The city of Tyre, in the book of Ezekiel, of course, is pictured as A, ship. B, a mighty horse. C, a great tree. Or D, none of these. Question 6. Which of the following does not describe the kings of Tyre? Which of the following does not describe the kings of Tyre? Prince, cherub, or gardener? Which of the following does not describe or is not used to describe the kings of Tyre? Prince, cherub, or gardener? Number 7. Who was more dominant throughout history, Tyre or Sidon? Who was more dominant throughout history, Tyre or Sidon?
What do you mean by dominant?
Powerful, influential.
Okay.
You've heard of, like in marriage, there's the dominant partner, and there's the
Yeah.
passive one, you know. They call the shots. Usually the wife, right? 8, true or false? The sinful influence of foreign idolatrous nations is pictured as a prickling or thorn patch in Ezekiel.
This is true or false?
Yeah. True or false? The sinful influence of foreign idolatrous nations is pictured as a prickling or thorn patch in Ezekiel. Number 9, true or false? Syria, Syria, and Aram, or the Arameans, all the same thing, are one and the same. True or false? Syria and Aram, or the Arameans, are one and the same. This has significance on the Syro-Ephraimitic invasion. Was it the Aram-Ephraimitic invasion? All right, and lastly, number 10. True or false? Some think that the language of Ezekiel 28 refers to Satan as well as the king of Tyre. True or false? Some think that the language of Ezekiel 28 refers to Satan as well as the king of Tyre. Is that true or false? Alrighty. Let you guys go ahead and swap papers and we will grade.
No bonus.
No bonus.
Fair enough.
Can't give you bonus every time. Otherwise it takes away the significance of it. Alright, number 1. Ammon, Moab, Edom, and Philistia are all rebuked by Ezekiel, Gabe.
True.
That is true. Yep, that is true. True or false? Mount Seir occupied both Moab and Edom, but it was usually used in reference to Edom. Parker?
True.
That is true. That is right. Mount Seir is the principal mountain in Edom, but it also was in Moab too, or accompanied that region as well, so that's why it's used in reference to Moab in Ezekiel. The Edomites were descendants of whom, Gabe?
Isaac.
No, one of his sons. Who?
Ishmael.
No, that would be his brother, so it's not Esau.
Oh.
Esau. We're not talking about the Muslims here. We are talking about the Edomites. And I'm pretty sure the word Edom means red, doesn't it? I mean, remember Esau's the one who's
Wait.
red and hairy.
Wait, Esau's a ginger.
Yeah, remember he's a real hairy guy, smelly and red and stuff.
Nice.
And yeah, the Edomites were his descendants. 4. What 2 nations are responsible for the downfall of Tyre? Give me one.
Babylon.
Babylon, give me the other.
Greece.
Yeah, or the Greeks. Good job. Babylon or the Greeks. Which one attacked first?
Babylon.
Yeah, good job. 5. City of Tyre is pictured as A, a ship, B, a mighty horse, C, a great tree, or D, none of these, Gabe.
Hey.
A, a ship.
It actually tripped me out a lot because in my notes all I put was Alexander the Great. And I was like, wait, where the heck was Alexander the Great from?
You're blanking. Oh no, I should know this. You just assume, oh,
I
I'll know
almost
that.
wrote Rome, but then I was like, wait.
Alexander the Roman. No, that can't be right. Yeah, I'm glad you.
It doesn't roll off the tongue as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught that. Yeah, remember what happened? I mean, he was pictured as a ship, but what happened to this ship? It started. Well, first, what did it do? Remember?
Oh, it was
big
like
ship drawn on the board.
getting all
Started
the
collecting
supplies and stuff
this
like
jewel, that jewel, this money, that money. Ooh, this, I'll take this. He became like this massive rich hoarder, and then his ship burst open and sank because he couldn't contain the load.
Nice.
Just like the parable or the example Jesus uses of the rich farmer who has a full crop and says, "Man, I'm gonna tear down my barns and build bigger barns." And God says, that guy's a fool. All right, 6. Which of the following does not describe the kings of Tyre? And we have 3 words here: prince, cherub, or gardener.
Gardner.
Yeah, he's not a gardener. Now, he has nice gardens, probably, but that's not what we're talking about. It said he was in the garden of God, but that's different. Which, by the way, remind me, in case I forget to mention it, we're going to have that reference to Eden again, the garden of God, today in reference to Egypt. So this should factor into your discussion, your mental discussion about, is the king of Tyre supposed to represent Satan or not, you know?
Yeah.
And does Egypt fit that too? Or anyway, it's interesting. I thought about that. 7. Who was more dominant throughout history, Tyre or Sidon, Gabe?
Tyre.
Yeah, Tyre. Sidon started out bigger in the early days, but then quickly that changed because Tyre's a great location. So, Tyre. True or false, Parker? The sinful influence of foreign idolatrous nations is pictured as a prickling or thorn patch in Ezekiel.
True.
Yeah, it's true. Those influences, they just keep poking you and poking you and poking you. They won't let you go. 9. True or false? Syria and Aram, or the Arameans, are one and the same, Gabe.
False.
Parker.
True.
That is true.
Sorry.
If it's not false, what could it be? Half false. Partial true. No. It is true.
Can we
The
say
Arameans or the Syrians? Remember map time. I won't necessarily draw it unless you want me to.
It's a map. It's a map. It's a
Alright, some
map.
of this
It's time
stuff.
for Seth map time.
Remember, over here you got the great Mediterranean Sea. Let's say you got Israel right here. Judah and Israel, because they're split. the Syrians, the Arameans are up here. Arameans or the Syrians, and the Syro-Ephraimitic, Israel and Aram, Israel and Syria, wanted to go together and overthrow Ahaz of the south. So sometimes it's tough to piece all this together, but once we get to that point, life's going to be so good. Like, don't you hate how, like, you have fuzzy things in your head? You're like, yeah, I know this, you know, I know Assyria did this, and then the time, you have like a pretty solid timeline, but then there's some fuzzy things in there, and then you're like, it throws everything off. It's like, yeah, but Alexander, wait, was he a Roman? And then you're like, hold on, I'm deciding between, did he come 300 years later or right here? Well, that has a huge effect, because what if you get it wrong? Oh, Alexander came 300 years later. Really? So he was conquering the world when Jesus was here, and somehow he missed Jesus? Did Jesus have miracle wars against Alexander? I don't know. That's interesting. You know, stuff that you don't even need to talk about, but
They are
all because your fuzziness or whatever. So that's something we want to work on. So now you know, Aram, Syria, we're talking about the same thing. Ephraim, or the other capital city, Samaria. Israel, we're talking about the same thing. Judah, the southern kingdom, same thing. What are some other ones?
Egypt has a lot.
Yeah, Egypt is real close to Ethiopia, so it's used the same thing. Cush is another name for Egypt. We're going to be talking more about them today. There's another one, though. I think, is it the Sidonians? Might be. Now, you see, now I'm fuzzy, but the Phoenicians have another name as well. The people of the Phoenician region. Babylonians, what's another name for the Babylonians?
So it's in the sea. Chaldean.
Chaldeans, yeah, that can get you. Chaldeans. Assyrians, I don't
The
remember.
Chaldean army.
Assyrians probably have some other names too, I'm just not
The
thinking
wicked
of
ones.
them. What's that?
The wicked ones.
Yeah, didn't they have like some weird name or something? I mean, there's a lot of illustrations, you know, like
Right.
the bird. Well, I don't think that was their actual name,
Right.
but they probably would have liked it because they used that in their own literature too.
Seth,
So-
your knowledge of history, it's just...
Well, we need to verbalize this so that we remember all these connections, because otherwise you can get thrown off. Just like Jerusalem used to be the city, well, David was king in Hebron first, then he went over to Jerusalem, but Jerusalem was Jebus before it was Jerusalem, of the Jebusites, and then he took it over and converted it into Jerusalem. So things like that.
Cool city, I bet.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but we want to try to keep all this straight because it's going to be a tremendous help. Because if you're busy like I am half the time having to fish for geographical knowledge or chronological knowledge, you forget, wait, what was I teaching on again? Because I was too busy trying to remember what goes where. So we'll get there though. All right, let me get your papers from you guys.
Wait, you did 10?
We didn't do 10?
10.
Oh, I just assumed you got that one right.
Well, we might have not.
Oh,
Now we feel
really?
bad if we didn't.
True or false? Some think that the language of Ezekiel 28 refers to Satan as well as the king of Tyre.
Maybe.
Sure.
What? What'd you put though?
True.
Yeah, true. Some. I said some. I didn't say everyone.
That's why I said maybe.
Good job. Good job. Stick through here.
And we ready to show this week.
Not too shabby, guys.
No bonus. Pulled an 80. Pulled a 90. Good job. Good job. Apply that work to Joe's class. Apply that mentality. Looks like you need to.
I was waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, looks like you need to. Is it because of the paper writing? Is that the biggest deal? Some of it is just laziness. I gather that. I'm assuming, unless you have another word for it, another synonym for laziness, another synonym for didn't get work turned in that I was already told should be turned in, and here's how you do it.
I call it restfulness.
Oh, I'm just in heaven. I'm enjoying God's rest. Yeah. So, if you want to talk about that, I'd be glad to. All right, let's start with this guy right here. Ooh, and since I have the screen in front of me, I can do one of these. Like here, people watching, take a look at this. This is our chronological. Well, it's not exactly chronological, but this is our date map if you call it that. Tells us what. So you see what we're seeing in the various chapters of when they go on. So in 29:1, it's got a date there of December 29th, 588. And by and large, these do go in chronological order, don't they? They go on down. So 29, 30, 31, 32, 32. Oh, but then we're back to 29, so that throws it off a bit, the end of 29. So hold on to this because we're going to be referring back to it almost the beginning of every new oracle. He's going to throw out a date. We're going to be like, what date is that? Also, this map right here with all these places in Egypt, it's in your book as well. This will come in handy because a lot of the places in Egypt that he talks about, here I'll show you guys in the camera. I'm sure you want to see it too. Yeah, this wonderful map of Egypt. A lot of the places that he talks about, that Smith talks about, or that Ezekiel talks about, we're just going to gloss over because it's I don't want you to miss the main lesson. A lot of times it's so easy to focus on where's the location of no and and put and all these other places, and there is some value to that. I don't want you guys to be steered wrong, but when there's this huge stack of places and they're all associated with Egypt, I think you guys get the idea that we're talking about Egypt in every single part of it here, and I don't want us to miss the main lesson. So this map will help clear up some of that, but there'll be some places he mentions that you can look it up in the book if you're really curious about. So that's today's fun. Yeah. All right, chapter 29. I'll start, and then we'll go around the room.
What are you reading out of?
ESV.
ESV?
That's my normal go-to.
All right, I'll go NLT then.
English Standard Version. Oh, good deal, good deal. You guys ready? It says, in the 10th year, in the 10th month, on the 12th day of the month, the word of the Lord came to me. Now we have to look at our date, though. What's the date for that?
June 7th, or January 7th.
January 7th. What year?
588. Right? Yeah.
Is that what it says?
I have 588.
29. Wait.
Actually,
that's
this
right.
modern dating is different from what I have here.
Yeah. You're looking at a footnote in your Bible, aren't you?
Yeah.
The thing that we have actually puts it at
December.
10th day, 10th. He puts it at December 29th, 588.
Gotcha.
So, if it's 588, what do we know about that date? What is it before? What is it after? Just to review our chronology here. What's it before? What's coming up in a year or two?
The deportation, or the
You're right.
yeah, which one though? Or is it
Five.
all of them? It'd be all of them, wouldn't it?
Well,
This
the
is
biggest
580.
one is in 586,
Yeah,
so we're
586.
2 years shy of that.
Gotcha.
So, Nebuchadnezzar would have started, because he started laying siege a year or two prior, so that's, coming up. And what happened before this, though, in 597, Ezekiel and 10,000 Jews were already taken in exile.
Yeah.
So that's already happened, and then there's another big one about to come. That's the date. That's why the date is useful to us. It's helpful. Okay, let's read the next verse.
All right. Son of man, turn and face Egypt and prophesy against Pharaoh, the king, and all of the people of Egypt.
Okay, now, so the next several chapters are about a prophecy against Egypt. And what's interesting, if you count chapters 29 through 32, and Smith does this, you have 97 verses about Egypt. 97 verses. Now that's more than 1 Peter, that's more than 2 Timothy or the book of Colossians, all dedicated to Egypt. So it's interesting. There's a lot there. All right, verse 3.
Speak and say, thus says the Lord God, behold, I am against you, Pharaoh king of Egypt, the great dragon that lies in the midst of his streams, that says, my Nile is my own. I made it for myself.
What an arrogant attitude.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny, though, how people can get such a big head? I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Now, another thing worth having in your notes is there are many Egyptian songs that treated Pharaoh like this great monster, that attributed this great monstership, if that's a word, to Pharaoh. And Smith thinks it's probably like a crocodile or something, but dragon, whatever. You get the idea. And he's like this great creature that rules the Nile. And what's funny is that God plays on that analogy, and he says, okay, well, if you're this great crocodile-like creature of the Nile, I'll deal with you, Crocky. I'll take care of you. I'm going to treat you like a crocodile, like the crocodile hunter, although he's obviously better than him because he didn't make it. Yeah. 4 says, oh, here we go. I will put hooks in your jaws. Now think about it. I mean, crocodile here, right?
Yeah.
We're capturing the croc. I will put hooks in your jaws. I will make the fish of your streams stick to your scales. I will draw you up out of the midst of your streams with all the fish of your streams that stick to your scales.
I will leave you and all your fish stranded in the wilderness to die. You will lie unburied on open ground, for I have given you as food to the wild animals and birds.
So, the big croc ruling the Nile River, what happens to him?
Getting pulled out of the water.
And he gets hooked out, pulled. Seems like he's killed and thrown in the field. Not exactly sure, but either way, he gets killed out there in the field. He's like helpless, and he's getting picked at by all these land animals that he doesn't know how to deal with. Like, well, so much for your greatness. And go ahead and keep going. We'll read 6 through 16, actually.
Then all the inhabitants of Egypt shall know that I am the Lord, because you have been a staff of reed to the house of Israel.
When they grasped you with the hand, you broke and tore all their shoulders. When they leaned on you, you broke and made their loins to shake.
That was 7, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will bring an army against you, O Egypt, and destroy both people and animals.
And the land of Egypt shall be a desolate and a waste. Then they will know that I am the Lord, because you said, the Nile is mine, and I made it.
Therefore, behold, I am against you, and against your streams. I will make the land of Egypt an utter waste and desolation, from Migdol to Syene, as far as the border of Cush.
11, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just really weirdly followed. All right.
It is.
For 40 years, not a soul will pass that way. Neither people nor animals will be it will be completely uninhabited.
And I will make the land of Egypt a desolation in the midst of desolated countries. And her cities shall be a desolation 40 years among cities that are laid waste. I will scatter the Egyptians among the nation and disperse them through the countries.
For thus says the Lord God, at the end of 40 years I will gather the Egyptians. Wait, am I reading what you just read?
No.
Okay, good. I will gather the Egyptians from the peoples among whom they were scattered.
It will be the lowest of all the nations, never again great enough to rise above its neighbors.
It shall be the most lowly of the kingdoms, and never again exalt itself above the nations. And I will make them so small that they will never again rule over the nation.
Okay. I'll read one more. And it shall never again be the reliance of the house of Israel, recalling their iniquity when they turn to them for aid. Then they will know that I am the Lord. All right, there's a lot in those verses, but interesting stuff about Egypt. Couple of things first. He describes Egypt. he describes them like a stick, right? That's the first analogy. But what is significance about this particular, what is the significance of this stick? It's not that significant. But what happens? It breaks. So it's like you have your walking stick, you lean on it for comfort, and it just snaps. Well, what happens when it snaps? Well, if you're lucky, you hit the ground. If you're unlucky, you get impaled. I mean, there's a lot of bad things that could happen, right? It reminds me of, all over YouTube, I feel like 1/10 of the fail videos on that particular website are all based on this pull-up bar, this chin-up bar that people put between their door frame. You know, they have that bar there, and it's like they snap it in, and then they try to do chin-ups on it, and what happens? The bar breaks every time. It just slides right out because doors were not made. I'm sorry for people who are fat, but doors were not made to hold us. They're just not. And little curtain rod holders are not really designed, no matter how good you think, they're not really designed to be able to hold heavy weights on a little door frame. But yet, that's always what happens. So that's the modern day analogy of the deceptive, rod. You think, oh yeah, this will hold me, this will support me. No, it won't. It can't do it. And that's Egypt. Egypt looks big and tough, but if you got nothing on the inside, maybe that's another good analogy too, because you guys have seen some things that you're like, oh man, that's strong, but then you realize later, oh, it's not. You ever go to pick something up and you're like, whoa, it's so light, whoa, or the opposite happens. You go to, whoa, what is in this thing? It's so heavy. You just can't always tell by looking. So Egypt was inflated, very inflated. Now, how are they able to be so inflated? How are they able to look so great even though apparently they weren't all that great? They weren't as reliable as they thought. What enabled that?
Probably like years of them being so powerful and mighty. It's like a reputation that they've just had for a very, very long time.
I totally agree with you. I think that's exactly it. They were very, very powerful for a long time. Israel knew that. I mean, they had them as slaves for that long period of time, that 215-year plus period. So they were a powerhouse for a long time, and they still, had all that built up, and they still had a big army and a lot there. So people would just assume, man, they're huge. And they would show up when it came to battles with Assyria or things like that. They would be around and they would throw, a little bit of military troops here and there and attack here and there just to keep it looking like they're pretty big and tough. And they were big, but it's easy for them to think too big about themselves because of that whole reputation thing. A couple of places he listed. Let's see, Migdol, right, that was one of them. Migdol and Syene. Y-E-N-E. This city is in the north, this is in the south. So that's probably all we're talking about here. I'm going to make you desolate from the north to the south, from all over. Now, how did that happen? And this is interesting. And you read this in Smith's book. But for years, there was no evidence, as I understand it, no evidence that Babylon, who's what we're going to talk about. Should I write this down here? Yeah, we'll talk more about it later. But what we have is the words of Josephus that says in 582 BC that Babylon invaded Egypt. So if he did that, well, and we also have, let's see, there's also a fragment of, okay, I always do this, it always throws me off, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, sorry. In 568, I keep thinking 586 because I'm dyslexiating the numbers, but in 568, not to be confused with 586, there's an inscription that we have, an inscription from Babylon that says that they invaded Egypt again in 568. So 582 Josephus, 568 Babylonian inscription that we found. Now, what about this 40-year desolation? And that's the other thing he's talking about. 40 years, probably, not positive, but the period from 568 all the way down to 530. That period of time would be, this would be from Babylon and them coming in to cripple Egypt, down to the Persian Empire, who, what is the Persian Empire known for doing? Particularly like Cyrus and guys like that. What was their policy with foreign nations that was different from Babylon or Assyria?
Didn't they try to, their big thing was trying to get the cities to basically join them or give them their like soldiers. They didn't necessarily want to wipe them out, they wanted to absorb them.
Yeah, exactly. They even thought, well, if we let them keep their culture, keep their leaders, then they'll serve us even more. So a lot of times they would even come in and allow them to rebuild to a certain extent. And so more likely than not, it's confusing if those numbers are next to each other, more likely than not, that's what happened here. That this 40-year period ended around 530 because Persia's got power, and Persia probably allowed them to rebuild a little bit and do better. Now, 568 to 530, that's only 38 years. It's not an even 40, but what do we know about Bible prophecy in years?
They're more of like a general estimate.
They're general, exactly. They're general. 38 years being called 40 is very common. Things like that are very, very common. That's just the way it is. They, remember we talked about it before, they use numbers a lot like an illustration. Like we do that sometimes, you know. I told you 1,000 times. Like, I've heard this 1,000,000 times already. Would you stop? Well, we're using the number like an illustration in that sense. And then there are degrees of accuracy. You know, you'd be like, oh, well, I don't know, about a half dozen or so, a dozen. What are we doing? Are we saying literally 12, literally 6? Well, probably not. We're just estimating, you know. And then we get real strict about, you know, 7, 8 point whatever. Well, they would use their numbers in the same kind of way. They would use it as generalities, as an example, you know, for roughly this amount of time, 40 years, you know. So it's nothing to be surprised about. So Persia may have come in and rebuilt that. So did that make sense? Do you guys understand these dates? 582, Josephus says Babylon came in. 568, Babylon themselves, and their inscription says that they came in. And 530, that period of almost 40 years down to 530, is when Persia took over, and they probably allowed Egypt to rebuild a bit, which explains the 40-year period that he's talking about here. So it seems like Babylon's goal was not to kill Egypt, but to just keep them crippled. Just keep them hurting enough that they couldn't do anything major. That just seems to be what the goal was.
Nice.
All right. 17.
Oh no, I'll take it.
Thanks. It is you.
It is me? Nice.
Once you read it, you have to tell us the date on our chart.
Alright. On April 26th, the first day of the new year, during the 27th year of the King Jehoiakim's captivity, this message came to me from the Lord. That would be, well, wait.
You have to go all the way down to
Oh,
the
yeah,
bottom.
all the way down. April 26th, 571.
So this is late. As a matter of fact, this is the latest oracle in the book. Which isn't that funny, right? In the middle of chapter 9, we have the latest written oracle in the book of Ezekiel. So that's interesting. Go ahead, Gabe.
Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, made his army labor hard against Tyre. Every head was made bald, and every shoulder was rubbed bare. Yet neither he nor his army got anything from Tyre to pay for the labor that he had performed against her.
Therefore, thus says the Lord God, behold, I will give the land of Egypt to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he shall carry off its wealth, and despoil it, and plunder it, and it shall be the wages for his army.
Yes, I have given him the land of Egypt as a reward for his work, saying, or says the sovereign Lord, because he was working for me when he destroyed Tyre.
On we're in 20.
Last verse, yeah, 21. That's where you're at.
On that day I will cause a horn to spring up for the house of Israel, and I will open your lips among them, and they will know that I am the Lord.
Okay. Excuse me. So, what's going to happen? Well, he shifts gears and kind of goes away from Egypt, but not really. But he starts talking about Nebuchadnezzar, and what does he say was the problem? Nebuchadnezzar did something for me but didn't get any pay. What was that?
He destroyed Tyre.
Yeah, but how is it he didn't get any pay?
Because when he went to destroy Tyre, he didn't. He didn't entirely destroy Tyre, though.
You're right. He didn't. He didn't. So, we'll review again. When he... So, Egypt down here, of course. Red Sea is in this general region there. But when we have the land of Israel, and we have Tyre somewhere around here, it's a city and also a coastal city. So when the Babylonians came, they laid siege for 13 years here. And they finally took it over, but they were never able to take this over. So what happened? Well, when the people retreat back into their island and they've got 13 years to do it, they're gathering up their stuff. They're probably not, I'll leave all my nice gold and fancy stuff behind. And besides, they have ships and trading going on anyway. So they retreated back here and would pretty much let him come in and take over this city. So he would have taken it over, but he wouldn't have gotten a whole lot of bang for his buck, you know.
But
13 years of siege is a long time.
But what they're saying, though, here is that when he hits Egypt, he will be rewarded, right?
Yes. And so what God basically says is, he did something that I wanted him to do, and he didn't get any spoils for it. So as his reward, I'm giving him Egypt. Oh, yeah, that's what he says. I'm going to give him the land of Egypt. That's going to be his spoil. So he gets to take it from there. Let's see. So, what do we got here? Oh, and because of that last verse, we should point out 530, about 538, about 8 years before the Egyptians kind of, their humiliation kind of went away a little bit. The Jews were allowed to return thanks to the nation of Persia. They were allowed to go back to their homeland. So that's probably why he mentions that in verse 21, I'll cause a horn to spring up, and they will open their lips among them. The idea of opening their lips is probably being cheerful, saying happy things again.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's almost like when somebody's really upset, they tend to not say anything, right? They tend to, a lot of times they shut down.
5:38.
When they're all like happy, cheery, you know, talking all the time, usually it's a good sign, not always. What's that?
538.
Yeah, about
Okay.
538 or so, about 8 years before 530, when we think maybe Egypt was allowed to grow up a little bit again.
Nice.
That would have been around that time, which moves us to chapter 30. Is that me? I think it's me. Ooh, big long verse. In chapter 30, the word of the Lord came to me.
Nice. Son of man, prophesy and give this message from the sovereign Lord. Weep and wail for that day.
For the day is near, the day of the Lord is near. It will be a day of clouds, a time of doom for the nations.
A sword shall come upon Egypt, and anguish shall be in Cush. When the slain fall in Egypt, and her wealth is carried away, and her foundations are torn down.
Ethiopia, Libya, Lydia, and Arabe,
Yeah, like Arabia or something.
Arabia. Oh, okay, cool. And all of the other allies will be destroyed in that war.
Okay. What version are you reading from?
I'm going NLT.
NLT. Okay, that's helpful because they use some of the different names. What do you have names wise for that 5th verse, Gabe?
Cush put Lud in all Arabia and Libya.
Okay, yeah. Are you ESV or something else?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I have the same kind of things. But I think you're probably right. Put and Lud, L-U-D, another name for Lydia, would be around the Asia Minor. And Put would be the western coast of the Red Sea. So, Red Sea is right here. Western coast, east, west. So the western coast of the Red Sea, we're talking this general area here, which makes sense. Okay. I'll leave it at that. Now usually Asia Minor, I thought, I'm gonna look this up on a map. You have a map? Because I thought Asia Minor was always associated with this mountain up here. Not mountain, this huge strip of land up here on the top of the Mediterranean Sea that kind of came in, and there are other places too.
He's saying that these nations are going to be destroyed, though?
This is how far the destruction will go, is what I think he's saying, right? Isn't that what it sounds like there? Yeah. It makes it sound like they will be destroyed, but probably more specifically, this is the type of destruction that Egypt should expect to have. It's all over. And if what he says about Asia Minor is true, that's way up there. So any fortresses or anything they had up there would be taken over too. So that's a very far and wide destruction. Which, if you think about it, it's also interesting. Cub, C-U-B, is that what you have? I have that written down somewhere. But that's in people who are allied with Egypt, but it's unknown. We don't know. Let's see, what does the ESV say?
I have a footnote. It says,
What does it say there?
Cub is otherwise unknown and may be another spelling for Lud, which is Libya.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. That's
Or
a good
Lub.
one.
Sorry, not Lub.
Okay. Well, unknown, so I guess we don't know, but apparently there are people that were allied with Egypt.
Nice.
But if that's true, we do know, by the way, though, that Egypt, when they came to do battle, like at the Battle of Carchemish, that takes place way up here, in Samaria and stuff. They are traveling all the way up here. That's a very long journey. A lot to pass through to meet. So even though they were a nation down here, they would have military influence and trade and things like that they would, because they got to make themselves look good. So they're putting it out there. Okay, verse 5. No, wait.
Verse 6.
6, thank you.
Thus says the Lord, those who support Egypt shall fall, and her proud might shall come down. From Migdol to Syene,
Sure.
they shall fall within her by the sword.
Now remind me, what's the significance of Migdol and Syene again?
From the north to the south.
North to the south. Beautiful. And they shall be desolated in the midst of desolated countries, and their cities shall be in the midst of cities that are laid waste.
And the people of Egypt will know that I am the Lord when I have set Egypt on fire and destroyed all their allies.
On that day, messengers shall go out from me in ships to terrify the unsuspecting people of Cush, and anguish shall come upon them on the day of Egypt's doom. For behold, it comes.
Thus says the Lord God, I will put an end to the wealth of Egypt by the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon.
He and his armies, the most ruthless of all, will be sent to demolish the lands, or demolish the land. They will make war against Egypt until slaughtered Egyptians cover the ground.
I will dry up the Nile and will sell the land into the hand of evildoers. I will bring desolation upon the land and everything in it, by the hand of foreigners. I am the Lord, I have spoken.
Thus says the Lord God, I will destroy the idols and put an end to the images in Memphis. There shall no longer be a prince from the land of Egypt, so I will put fear in the land of Egypt.
I will destroy southern Egypt, set fire to Zoan, and bring judgment against Thebes.
Yeah, Thebes is what I call
Thebes.
And I will pour out my wrath on Helisulam, the
Good job.
stronghold of Egypt, and cut off the multitude of Thebes. 6.
Did you finish that verse?
Yeah, 16.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was looking. And I will set fire to Egypt. Pelusium shall be in great agony. Thebes shall be breached, and Memphis shall face enemies by day.
The young men of Helopolphus or Polis.
Oh, you have like Hierapolis. My version says on. It's a lot easier. O-N.
There you go. Maybe yours. And Bubestis.
My version says Pi Beseth.
Yeah,
But I don't know.
will die in battle, and the women will be taken away as slaves.
At Tahpanhes, the day shall be dark, when I break there the yoke bars of Egypt, and her proud might shall come.
Think of it might as in strength, not,
Oh,
oh, he
yeah.
might do that. Because that'll confuse you. Your proud strength or might.
And her proud might shall come to an end in her. She shall be covered by a cloud, and her daughters shall go into captivity.
Thus I will execute judgments on Egypt. Then they shall know that I am the Lord. So, a lot of locations there. Do you see any of them on your fancy Egyptian map there?
Maybe one or two.
Any of them at all? Some are easier to find than others. You can look through the commentary if you want to get more details. I don't want to get too bogged down. What is the main point when God has a prophet? Instead of just saying, nation's going to be destroyed, end of story, move on. Instead of that, he says, I'm going to list every single detail about your destruction. And he lists all these random little places, big places, and from here to there to there to there. What is the significance of that, and why would that happen?
Overkill. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it seems like overkill, doesn't it? Why would God want overkill to happen?
Just to describe to them, like, the entirety of how much he is going to get rid of them. By, like we've said, it's north to south, east to west, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Sure. Is there anything else? The entirety of it? It's really going to happen. It's all over. Is there anything else?
To show, like, I don't know, I kind of think of it maybe like he's saying, if I wanted to, I could.
Oh, well, that could be.
I
That
don't
could
know.
be. The other thing I was thinking of, not only entirety, but I think it's the seriousness of it too. Like a lot of times, you know, oh, I'll kill you. Yeah, whatever. He was just joking or whatever. But when they say, no, I'm going to take you, I'm going to tie you down. It's going to be at midnight when no one's around. I'm going to slit your throat and let you bleed out slowly. Then I'm going to chop off your fingers. Then you're starting to get creeped out a little bit. You're like, okay, I think maybe this person's either serious or really weird. Something's up. But isn't that different? Isn't there a difference between, oh, you're going to die, warning, you know, we're going to execute you, you're going to be killed, or no, I'm going to rip out your arm, and then I'm going to go to your other arm, and I'm going to rip that out. Then I'm going to come to your nose, and I'm going to cut it off and shove it in your eye socket. And then and then you just keep going down this list. What would be the purpose of that? Well, not only is it totality, it's also seriousness, or you're trying to scare people straight a little bit too, to let them recognize, this is bad, this is really bad. It's not just, oh yeah, whatever, another death threat. No. This is serious.
One of our
Emphasis by all these different details.
It was one of the minor prophets did that too. I can't remember exactly which one, but wasn't there like a specific word that we said for that?
Emphasis by enumeration?
Emphasis by enumeration.
Yeah, a lot of times, and this is like that too. It would be, there are other examples of it besides this, but I mean, a lot of times that would just be synonymous things happening. But this is pretty similar. I mean, we're talking about the destruction of Egypt, and he's using it in various ways, synonymous different ways. So yeah, I guess emphasis by enumeration would be a good way to describe it.
Gotcha. On to the next
And it
one.
gets my attention, that's for sure. Okay.
All right.
20 through 26, right?
Yeah. 1 second. Sorry, I'm starting my note. All right. On April 29th, during the 11th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity, this message came to me from the Lord.
All right, what date does Smith give? This is chapter 30, verse 20?
Yeah, April 30th, 587.
April
So
30th, 587.
This is
So the
right
siege
up
has
there.
started,
Okay.
but we're just before the big deportation. So Nebuchadnezzar's already out there, laying siege to Jerusalem. All right, keep going.
Son of man, I have broken the arm of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and behold, it has not been bound up to heal it by binding it with a bandage, so that it may become strong to wield the sword.
What's the significance of arm again?
Strength.
Strength. Yeah. So Egypt might be a big warrior, but if his arm's broken, he can't hold a sword. Not going to be a very good fighter. That's the idea. A lot of big guys are very intimidating and scary, but then if they have a heart attack, they're not much of a fighter, you know. And so that's similar to what we see with Egypt here. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, behold, I am against Pharaoh, king of... Oh, wait, you just read that, didn't you?
No.
Oh, emphasis by enumeration again. I am against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and I will break his arms, both the strong arm and the one that was broken. I will make... And the one that was broken, he's going to break it again. Oh, poor guy.
Nice.
And the one that was broken. I will make the sword fall from his hand.
Sorry,
23.
I was following you along. Mine also says, make his sword clatter to the ground. I got stuck on that for a second. I enjoyed it. It's a good visual image for me. All right.
Good.
I will scatter the Egyptians to many lands throughout the world.
And I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon, and put my sword in his hand. But I will break the arms of Pharaoh, and he will groan before him like a man mortally wounded.
I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon, but the arms of Pharaoh shall fall. Then they shall know that I am the Lord when I put my sword into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he stretches it out against the land of Egypt.
I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations, dispersing, sorry.
Yeah.
Dispersing them throughout the earth. Then they will know that I am the Lord.
Okay. I want to read you guys a quote, because I think that'd be easier. And this is about what actually happened in the history of Egypt. And we'll go into more of it. We're just taking bits and pieces at a time. This is in the book. It says, following her destruction, Egypt will never again be ruled by a native prince. So it has been. Persians, Greeks, Ptolemies, and Romans ruled Egypt in olden times. Since AD 638, Egypt has been ruled by Muslims. This guy named James something, summarizes the situation. And he says, with the fall of Psamtik III in 525 BC, Egypt belonged to a new world, toward the development of which she had contributed much, but in which she could no longer play an active part, a lot like what we've been saying. Her great work was done and unable, like Nineveh and Babylon, to disappear from the scene. So she was built up, those great pyramids and things like that were there. She lived on her artificial life for a time under the Persians and the Ptolemies, ever sinking till she became merely the granary of Rome, to be visited as a land of ancient marvels by wealthy Greeks and Romans, who have left their names scratched here and there upon her hoary monuments, not like not like whore, but big monuments.
Right.
Just as the modern tourist admiring the same marvels still continue to do, but her unwarlike people still making Egypt a garden of the world show no signs of an awakening. In the words of the Hebrew seer, there shall be no more prince out of the land of Egypt, have been literally fulfilled. So,
Nice.
and that's probably a good way to put it. Egypt is like the garden of the world in a sense. I mean, beautiful, massive pyramids that we all want to talk about, but it's an olden time kind of place, right? I thought that was a nifty little history of Egypt, how what Ezekiel says is true.
But there's
Yeah.
still Egyptians alive there, right?
Oh yeah.
Where
It
do they
ex-
live there?
I think so. I mean, I think there are people there and everything, but they are not,
No.
warlike, massive, threatening nation, world-dominating nation. No, they're not. And honestly, I don't know the connection if modern-day Egyptians are the same as ancient Egyptians or not. So I don't
Right.
want to speak on that because I'm really not sure. Let's move on to chapter 31.
Nice.
A lot of this is, I don't want it to get, we got to study it through. I don't want it to get too monotonous. I'm trying to throw in little details here and there, but it's the same
Right.
topic. A lot of stuff about Egypt.
Mm.
All right, you start? I forget. Chapter 31, first verse.
I'll do it.
Go for it.
On June 21st, during the 11th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity, this message came to me from the Lord.
Pause. Date look up. 31,
June
1.
21st, 587.
587. So only 2 months later. Only 2 months later.
Son of man, say to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and to his multitude, whom are you like in your greatness?
Behold, Assyria was a cedar in Lebanon, with beautiful branches and forest shade, and towering height, its top among the clouds.
Deep springs watered it and helped it grow tall and luxurious.
Sure.
Whatever that word. Oh, kind of. All right. Anyways, the
Or is
water
it
flowed
luscious?
around. No. Anyways, the water flowed around it like a river, streams to all the trees nearby.
So it towered high above all the trees of the field. Its boughs grew large and its branches long, from abundant water in its shoots.
All the birds of the heavens made their nests in its boughs. Under its branches, all the beasts of the field gave birth to their young. Under its shadow lived all great nations.
It was strong and beautiful, with wide spreading branches, for its roots went deep into the abundant water.
The cedars in the garden of God could not revile it, nor the fir trees equal its boughs. Neither were the plane trees like its branches. No tree in the garden of God was its equal in beauty.
I made it beautiful, and the mass of its branches, and all the trees of Eden envied it, that were in the garden of God.
Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says, because Egypt became proud and arrogant, and because it set itself so high above others, with its top reaching to the clouds.
I will give it into the hand of a mighty one of the nations. He shall surely deal with it, as its wickedness deserves. I have cast it out.
Foreigners, the most ruthless of nations, have cut it down and left it. On the mountains and in all the valleys, its branches have fallen, and its boughs have been broken in all the ravines of the land. And all peoples of the earth have gone away from its shadow and left it.
The birds roost on its fallen trunk, and wild animals lie among its branches.
All this is in order that no trees by the waters may grow to towering height, or set their tops among the clouds, and that no trees that drink water may reach up to them in height, for they are all given over to death, to the world below, among the children of man, with those who go down to the pit.
Okay, we'll take a reading break there. So, what's the illustration that Ezekiel uses, not of Egypt, but actually of Assyria?
A
Big tree.
A massive tree. How tall is this tree?
Clouds.
It goes up to the clouds. Now, I think there's a lot of hyperbole here. I think there's a lot of poetry and illustration, because this tree goes up to the clouds. Maybe literal, but that's a huge tree, right?
Yeah.
Huge tree. It reaches up to the clouds. It's so big that nations are underneath it, which is pretty big. And then it's so old, I guess we might say, so well rooted, that it stands out among the trees of where? What location? Where was it located?
Syria.
Well, it is representing Assyria, but it's the same thing as the illustration of Tyre. It says you were in
Oh, the
Eden,
garden.
the garden of God, and he even says Eden there. So this tree, this great tree, is in the Garden of Eden, growing. It's huge, and it gets chopped down and leveled. Now, this causes me to question a little bit the validity of using Ezekiel 28 to refer to Satan, because it may still be, but how, is it Assyria now? Why is Assyria in the Garden of God in Eden? Well, we know from poetic language, we know clearly this has got to be poetic language. There's no connection between Assyria and the Garden of Eden, at least none that I could see besides, their greatness or whatever. So I think that's all that's going on here. And a lot of times kings were likened to the planets, the sun, the moon, the stars. They tops of mountains. They pictured themselves as gods, and so sometimes that imagery is used. Falling stars, well, the king's going down. So you're so well rooted. You're like in the Garden of God. Well, I don't think that's literal, but that's my opinion. I don't think it's talking about Satan. I could be wrong. It might be. Do you have a question or something?
Yeah. Is he basically just talking up Babylon right now? Is that
For a reason. He didn't just switch to. Wait, did I say Assyria?
Yeah.
Wait. Whoa. Yeah, we're talking about Assyria right now. Sorry.
Yeah, Assyria is the tree.
Yeah, Assyria is the tree.
But it seems like
The Babylonians came and chopped that tree down.
So it seems like he's basically describing Assyria and how great they were, and
You're
it's
right.
like, oh hey, by the way, that great nation was cut down by Babylon, and guess what? Babylon's coming after you.
Yeah, you got the right idea. I think that's the direction he's going.
Right.
Sort of, anyway. Very similar to that.
That's
Let's keep going. Let's finish up
See
this
if
chapter.
I'm tracking here.
Yeah, I think you are.
Alright,
I think that's
verse
it. 15 is where we're at.
15 onward. Alright. This is what the sovereign Lord says: when Assyria went down to the grave, I made a deep spring, I don't know how to say that word, mourn.
Yeah.
Deep springs mourn. I stopped its rivers and dried up its abundant water. I clothed Lebanon in black and caused the trees the trees of the field to wilt.
I made the nation to quake at the sound of its fall, when I cast it down to Sheol with those who go down to the pit, and all the trees of Eden, the choice and best of Lebanon. All that drink water, were comforted in the world below.
They also went down to Sheol with it, to those who are slain by the sword. Yes, those who were its arm, who lived under its shadow among the nations. We can pause there for a second. What is Sheol?
Abode of the dead.
Yeah, you're right. What is an abode?
Place. Well, Sheol's also a term for Hades.
Welcome to my humble abode. What am I inviting
House.
you? Yeah, my house, my dwelling. It's where I live. Sheol, you're right, is the abode, the dwelling of the dead. But that's a pretty general term, right? A lot of times NIV translates it grave, and I think I understand why, because they're talking about, well, where the dead people go. But keep in mind that Hades and Sheol are, as far as I know, synonymous terms. Hades used in the New Testament, Sheol is used in the Old Testament, but Hades is used in two senses. There's a general sense where I'll look at it this way, and it's not literally the underworld, but it was, since the Hebrews were very picturesque or whatever, they like visual, they would picture it as, you know, the body when it dies, what happens to the body?
It's buried.
It gets buried and it
Or burnt.
Yeah, and it disintegrates into the ground, back to dust from which it came. And so the picture is, you know, like it goes down to the abyss. Like it's talked about in Revelation. What is an abyss? It's a bottomless pit.
Yeah.
It's like it's just going down and down and down, and for all we know, there's no bottom to it. Well, when they oftentimes used it this way, even though I don't think a direction really matters, so I don't think we should get stuck on that. But they would say go down to the pit or go down to Sheol a lot of times. So that was the picture. So Sheol is this place where the dead people are. It is the equivalent, as far as I know, hopefully I'm not teaching you wrong, but I think this is true, of Hades as it's used in the New Testament. But what we know about Hades, so we're in another dimension here. We're now in the spiritual dimension, okay?
Right.
So don't get confused. Oh, it's under the dirt. I dug my way to Hades. No. Not, I don't want you to get confused. But Hades is used in a general sense to encompass this entire space, or it is used in a specific sense to encompass the space where wicked people go. And if that's the case, what's on this side? Exactly.
Paradise.
So you see the difference? Sometimes Hades is the whole kit and caboodle, just like Sheol is the whole thing. You haven't heard
What?
that expression in a while? Kit and caboodle?
No.
Everything?
I've never heard the expression, sorry. Boodle.
Yeah,
I
the
liked
whole
it,
thing. The whole shebang, everything. Sheol, Hades usually refers to all of that, but Hades is used, especially in the story of the rich man and Lazarus, to be a specific part. And paradise, which would also be in Hades, I know, confusing, right? But paradise is the good section, Hades, bad section.
Yes.
Get it? So, specific sense, general sense.
You would know by context? Or?
I think you would. Because when a good person's in Hades, a good person goes down to Sheol. Wait a minute. Are we
Right.
speaking literally, or are we speaking in general terms like, well, they're dead and gone, so they went to the next place? You know, and is the term used to refer to, well, the next place? They went to the afterlife or wherever. Or is it used to talk about a specific, you know, that place in Hades where the bad people go, or paradise, the place in Hades where the good people go? So I hope I haven't confused you more. But.
I actually like that.
Okay.
And so here, you think they'll be talking about the specific Hades?
No, I don't think so. I think here he says Sheol. I think he's talking about just the grave, where all the dead people go. That's where you're going to join them. And since they're visual, it's like they may have even pictured it underground. Who knows? Egyptians are idolaters who probably had mystical views anyway. They might have just thought, ooh, there's something weird down there. And like, well, come join them. You're going to go down there and you don't come back up. Last verse of the chapter. You read it, Parker, because it fulfills what you
Alright.
have called out earlier.
Nice. Alright. O Egypt, to which the trees of Eden will be compared, or will you compare your strength and glory? Question mark. You too will be brought down to the depths, With all these other nations, you will lie there among the outcasts who have died by the sword. This will be the fate of Pharaoh and his hordes. Hordes?
Yeah, hordes.
Um,
Like hoarders.
I,
Lots
the
of
sovereign
things.
Lord, have spoken.
So let's have some fun with this. I think you understand the logic,
I
right?
didn't know hordes was spelled with an ES. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think so.
Nice.
So,
Let's do it.
let's picture this the way the Bible does. Since it uses a picture, we should try to draw a picture, right?
Yeah.
And since a tree is one of the few things that I halfway am capable of drawing,
Yeah,
why
use
not?
that one.
So, of all the trees in the Garden of Eden, we've got this one right here.
The thinnest and
The
biggest.
great tree of Assyria. The amazing tree of Assyria, right? And I mean, it is. Ooh, clouds are up here. Ooh, I mean, it's, you know, we're in the Garden of Eden where all the other little trees, you know, whatever.
Nice.
It's towering. Nations can fit underneath it. This huge, I mean, he pretty well drums up how amazing this tree is. He's just bragging about how huge it is, right? But then along comes
Big
Babylon.
Babylon. With an axe. It's a big sweaty guy with an axe.
Babylon, yeah, he's a giant, obviously, because he's standing on the trees of the Garden of Eden. Babylon, and Babylon has in his hands, let's see,
A grenade.
no, a chainsaw. See my chainsaw there? He's got to have like a demented look to him. He's chopping it. Along comes Babylon with his version, the ancient equivalent of a chainsaw, and he levels this tree. And then he turns over here. And what does he see?
It's easy to do.
Egypt. Let's think logically here. My name's Ezekiel. I want to talk to you for a minute. If God had him cut down this huge, huge, huge tree, what do you think he's going to do to you? How on earth do you think you're somehow more stable than Assyria? This great, great, huge nation. You're not nearly as big as them. So you're right. Your logic is correct, Parker. You see, if God leveled Assyria through Babylon that easily, Egypt, why do you think you stand a chance? You don't. Chainsaw guy is going to turn. Mr. Chaldean Chopper over there is going to turn and hack you down as soon as he jumps into the shark and saves that lady's life. Though he's got to do that first. You know, the Sharknado. The shark's
Magic's not
flying.
hurt her or himself.
Oh, how terrible. Hey, chapter 32 is the final chapter of today.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny when you say it that way, the final chapter, but it's different.
Of,
Go, yeah, take it away, Gabe. Let's read the first 6 verses.
In the 12th year, in the 12th month, on the first day of the month, the word of the Lord came to me.
All right, Gabe, look that up in your nifty
March
date
4th,
maker. March 4th, when?
585.
585. So wait, when's that? We were at 587. Now we're at 585.
After the major deportation.
After the major deportation. Interesting. Son of man, raise a lamentation over Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and say to him, you consider yourself a lion among the nations. I'm trying to speak sarcastically here. You consider yourself a lion among the nations, but you're like a dragon in the seas. You burst forth in your rivers, trouble the waters with your feet, and foul their rivers.
I have a question about that.
All right, ask it after we finish the
Okay.
first 6 verses.
Gotcha. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says: I will send my people to catch you with my net and haul you out of the water.
And I will cast you on the ground, on the open field. I will fling you, and will cause all the birds of the heavens to settle on you. And I will gorge the beasts of the whole earth with you.
I will strew your flesh upon the mountains and fill the valleys with your carcass.
I will drench the earth with your gushing blood, all the way to the mountains, filling the ravines to the brim.
Okay. What was your question?
I just find it. I guess it's more of a statement. I'm sorry, but
That's fine. What was your statement?
It was. He compares them to. He's like, you think you're a lion, and then he goes back to comparing them to the sea monster, the dragon.
Yes. Yeah.
But that was like his whole thing at the beginning, where he was like, "Oh, you think you're a dragon, this mighty thing."
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So we must be focusing on the poetry of the situation, right?
Yeah.
In what has changed in this situation? Well, what is a lion? What's significant about a lion?
King of the jungle.
The king of the jungle, king of all the animals, right? Well, that's how we picture him, the great king of the animals. However, if this dragon is a crocodile, or even if he's a sea monster of some kind, is he the king of all the animals everywhere?
No.
Not exactly. What would he be the king of?
The sea.
Of this waterway that he's got.
Yeah, the little
And so all he's really focusing on is the super inflated ego of this Egyptian king, of this pharaoh. He owned the Nile, which you guys know this, right? The only reason Egypt is on the map as a nation is because of this huge Nile River. The whole place would be desert wasteland if it weren't for the Nile River, making all that fertility in this great delta up here with the waterways and stuff. So Egypt thinks they're a lion. In other words, they think they can prance all over here and dictate what happens in the world, what happens in other nations and come in and stuff. But in reality, their only power is right here. They're stuck in their waterway. And if you get them out of water for too long, God can just throw a net on them and they're done. He can capture them. You get the idea?
Yeah.
The analogy really does fit. But that's not how they think of themselves. They think of themselves as, oh, we're the lion. We come over. We rule the world. But they don't. They have their domain, and they can only go so far before it'll come back to bite.
Which is kind of funny since they have to travel so far to like do battle and all that funny stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like you'd think they would just like want to hunker down and chill.
Sure. You know what though? I think, in some ways, I think they were smart. They tried to make themselves look big so that people wouldn't know that they're not as big as they think they are.
Yeah.
But the other reason why I think a crocodile or a sea monster analogy like that fits is because crocodiles can go on land, right? And occasionally they thrash out of the water and they grab like an antelope or something massive and they rip it down. So they're powerful creatures. You give them credit where it's due. And Egypt would fit that role pretty well. Occasionally Egypt would come up here, have a successful battle or two, come over here and fight. And as a matter of fact, Egypt in 586, around that time, offered some aid to the Israelites, to the people of Judah. He offered a real little bit of military aid. It was way insufficient. Wasn't nearly enough to stop Nebuchadnezzar or anything like that. And obviously, God's people thought, oh man, Egypt's going to come through and really save us, and the false prophets were saying that. And they showed up, but they showed up without anything nearly enough to make a difference. So that was their thing. They would thrash out of water, but they missed that time, and then they'll just creep back into their Nile where they belong.
It's also different because like this is way more graphic. On the other one, earlier it just says that he's going to pull him out into the dry land and everything, but in this one it's talking about how he's going to like tear him open essentially.
It is interesting. It's almost like, in case you forgot what I said earlier, let me expand on that. I'm going to not only thrash you, I'm going to capture you, I'm going to tear you open.
By enumeration.
Yeah, or by repetition in this case too.
Oh, nice. Nice.
All right, I think you're reading now. Let's read verses 7 through 16.
When I blot you out, I will veil the heavens and darken the stars. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon will not give you its light.
All the bright lights of heaven will make dark over you. I will make dark over you, and put darkness on your land, declares the Lord God.
I will trouble the hearts of many peoples when I bring your destruction among the nations and the countries that you have not known.
Yes, I will shock many lands and their kings will be terrified at your fate. They will shudder in fear for their lives as I banish my word, or not banish, brandish, I don't know, sorry. My sword before them on the day of the fall, or of your fall.
For thus says the Lord God, the sword of the king of Babylon shall come upon you.
I will cause your multitude to fall by the swords of mighty ones, all of them most ruthless of nations. They shall bring to ruin the pride of Egypt, and all its multitude shall perish.
I will destroy all your flocks and your herds that graze beside the streams. Never again will people or animals muddy those waters with their feet.
Then I will make their waters clear, and cause the rivers to run like oil, declares the Lord God.
When I make the land of Egypt desolate, and when the land is desolate of all that fills it, when I strike down all who dwell in it, then they will know that I am the Lord.
Yes, this is the funeral song they will sing for Egypt. Let all the nations mourn. Let them mourn for Egypt and its hordes. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken.
Okay. So, one of you guys look up Joel 2:10, because we need a reminder of this. Joel chapter 2, verse 10, whoever's getting that. Because in the first several verses we were reading, when I blot, what does he say?
My arrows will
Yeah, I will cover the heavens and make their stars dark. This is in verse 7. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give its light. Bright lights of heaven will make dark over you, put darkness in your land. The reference to the luminaries, the great lights in heaven, is common, and Joel uses it too, right? So what does it say in Joel 2:10?
I thought about that when I read this.
The earth quakes before them, the heavens tremble, the sun and the moon are darkened, the stars withdraw their shining.
Yeah.
That's ESV.
Yeah, that's good. What does that picture when it's used in the Old Testament? The sun darkened, moon not shining. Sometimes the moon turned to blood.
End times and everything. The day of judgment.
A day of judgment. When you say end times, think, well, end of a nation, usually is what's going on. The end of a period, end of an era, end of a nation. A great time of judgment. That's what that language is used as. And sometimes it helps because the rulers picture themselves as like the heavens or the stars or whatever. And so the stars are being brought down. That means king's going down, right? But Joel 2:10 uses the same language, right? We've just confirmed that. And then in Acts chapter 2, which I know you guys know this already, but Acts 2 is the reference. In verse 16, Peter says, this is when, remember, this is when the Holy Spirit came down on them. They were speaking in tongues. In verse 16, but this is what was uttered through the prophet Joel. Quote, and in the last days it shall be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and daughters will prophesy, your young men will see visions, old men dream dreams. And he keeps on going. Oh, in verse 19, I will show wonders in the heavens above, signs in the earth below, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. And the sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the day of the Lord comes. In the great magnificent day, and it shall come to pass, everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. So, we know that what Joel talked about in Joel 2:10 is fulfilled here in Acts, right? We know that. So what happened in Acts? The Holy Spirit came, the church came, which was Christ's judgment on earth, I guess. It's either get right or you're in trouble. The Jews, yeah, what was their judgment then?
You guys aren't the chosen ones anymore.
Yeah, you're not the chosen ones anymore. That's exactly right. You guys, you've been saved by the law up till now, but now Christ died, the sacrifice, the new covenant's here. And if you reject Christian baptism, if you reject being into Christ, you're not saved anymore by your legalistic righteousness. It's not going to happen. So Yeah, that is the fulfillment of this great judgment. So it is a picture. Because obviously they didn't actually see stars falling to earth. And, that, I don't think that exactly happened. So it is symbolic, and that's how we know it. So in case anyone pressures you on that, I think, especially if someone's trying to get some goofy end times theology from that or something, just remember the reference, Joel 2:10, Acts 2:16, 17, 18, right in there, because that is a definite fulfillment of that judgment language. And so it's pretty clear cut, So we don't want to be confused. All right, let's read 17 through 21. Whose turn is it?
I think it's one.
Okay.
In the 12th year, in the 12th month, on the 15th day of the month, the word of the Lord came to me.
All right, date says
March 18th.
March 18th, 585. So just, what is that, 2 weeks later?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, 2 weeks later, same year
A little bit
after
over. That's all right.
after the deportation has happened. Yeah. Sorry, I looked away. What verse are we on?
18.
18. Son of man, wail over the multitude of Egypt and send them down, her and the daughters of majestic nations, to the world below, to those who have gone down to the pit. Sound familiar? Sheol, Hades.
Say to them, O Egypt, you are the lover.
Is it lover?
No.
Romancer.
Lure?
Lover. Anyways.
Lure?
It's
Interesting.
love and then L-I-E-R.
Oh, lovelier.
Oh. That's how you spell lovely? Awesome.
I think so.
I've never seen that before.
Now you know.
Cool stuff. All right, you learn everything. All right. You are lovelier than the other nations? ? No. So go down to the pit and lie there among the outcasts.
They shall fall amid those who are slain by the sword. Egypt is delivered to the sword. Drive her away, and all her multitudes.
The mighty chiefs shall speak of them with their helpers out of the midst of Sheol. They have come down. They lie still. The uncircumcised slain by the sword. So, pit is another reference for
Sheol.
Sheol, Hades, the place where the dead people go. Yeah, and this is kind of a weird wording, so I want to make sure you guys got it, because it was tricky to me. My version says in verse 19, whom do you surpass in beauty, ? Your version said no, right?
Yeah.
It had that big. That's helpful. That is helpful. Because it's a rhetorical question. Mine doesn't have that. Whom do you surpass in beauty? Go down and be laid to rest with the uncircumcised. Probably that they interpreted it a little bit, but I think they're right. Who do you surpass in beauty? Nobody. It's a question that you obviously know you're nothing like some of these other great nations like Assyria and some of these other places. So the obvious answer is no, nobody. You don't surpass them. And you will be laid to rest. And it almost seems like it's picturing the dead people down there like, ooh, Egypt, come join us. We are dead and you are too. Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of interesting.
I think it's
picture.
funny that it's like doing this and picturing Egypt this way, because like even as a kid, when you're learning about Egypt and stuff like that, you just picture it as like this crazy, amazing place. Like even still, like
Mhm.
I would. So it's kind
You
of
would.
funny. It's kind of funny.
And it once was.
Yeah.
It once was, yeah. Let's go ahead and
Oh, that's
finish off the chapter, actually, 22 through the rest of the chapter.
on to the end. Is it me?
Yeah, I think it's you.
All right. Assyria lies there, surrounded by the graves of its army, those who were slaughtered by the sword.
Whose graves are set in the utmost parts of the pit, and her company is all around her grave. All of them slain, fallen by the sword, who spread terror in the land of the living.
Elam is there, and all her multitude around her grave. All of them slain, fallen by the sword, who went down uncircumcised into the world below, who spread their terror in the land of the living, and they bear their shame with those who go down to the pit.
They have a resting place among the slaughtered, surrounded by the graves of all those hordes. Yes, they terrorized the nations while they lived, but now they lie in shame with others in the pit, all of them outcasts, slaughtered by the sword.
Meshach, Tubal is there, and all her multitude, her graves all around it, all of them uncircumcised, slain by the sword, for they spread their terror in the land of the living.
And they do not lie with the mighty, the fallen from among the uncircumcised who went down to Sheol with their weapons of war, whose swords were laid under their heads, and whose iniquities are upon their bones. For the terror of the mighty men was in the land of the living.
You too, Egypt, will lie crushed and broken among the outcasts, all slaughtered by the sword.
Edom is there, her kings and all her princes, who for all their might are laid with those who are killed by the sword. They lie with the uncircumcised, with those who go down to the pit.
The princes of the north are there, all of them, and all the Sidonians who have gone down in shame with the slain. For all the terror that they caused by their might, they lie uncircumcised with those who are slain by the sword, and bear their shame with those who go down to the pit.
When Pharaoh and his entire army arrive, he will take comfort that he is not alone in having his hordes killed, says the sovereign Lord.
For I spread terror in the land of the living, and he shall be laid to rest among the uncircumcised, with those who are slain by the sword. Pharaoh and all his multitude, declares the Lord.
So he lists a bunch of nations, right? And what's the common thread between each one of these nations he mentions?
They're all dead.
They're dead. They're all dead. Elam, Tubal, and Meshach were old nations that God had let to die. And even Edom and the Sidonians, which are also Phoenicians, they're brought down too. So, what's funny is the way he ends this in verse 31. When Pharaoh sees them, he will be comforted for all his multitude. What's comforting about that?
He's not alone.
You're right, he's not alone. At least I'm not the only dead guy here. You guys are here. That's the only comfort that he has, is that, well, there are a bunch of other people who died with you and you're joining them because they were idiots like you, you know?
Kind of
That's
weird though.
kind of weird.
When I was reading that, I was just like,
Because it's a weird place to throw it in, but that's kind of what lets you know, wait, how is that comforting? You have to think about it. Oh, okay, yeah, you're not alone.
it kind of shows you though how like self-centered he is. It's like,
That's true. It's like, well, I'm not the only one.
right.
A little bit of pride there. You bring up a really good point. So, what we need to close with, though, is what I started to tell you earlier. Now I think it's a good time for it. For years, there was not any evidence that Babylon invaded Egypt. And you know, Babylon, big nation, Egypt, big nation, you would have expected to find something. So critics, skeptics, were all over this. There's, saying there's just not one shred of evidence and stuff. So it's fortunate that we live in the time when we do. There still isn't a lot, but we have three things. I'll write them up here just to help them be more memorable. The first thing that we have is what we talked about earlier. Yes, we have the testimony of Josephus. Josephus that says in 582 there was that Babylon invaded. So we have his testimony there. Let's get a reference to that. It says Nebuchadnezzar fell upon Egypt, slew their king, and set up another in his place. And some of the Jewish refugees in Egypt were also taken captive back to Babylon. So that's what we have from Josephus. Secondly, we have a fragment, a really small, let's see, what is it? it was a fragment of a Babylonian chronicle. Let's see. And on it says that an attack against Egypt was made by Nebuchadnezzar. And it happened in his 37th year. So that would be 568. I'll just put that there. 568. And we have that from a fragment document from Babylonian ones. So that's pretty good evidence too. And then there's one other thing. Let's see. This one confuses me a bit. Okay, this is, and I think SR Driver is the one who pointed this out, but in the Louvre, actually, there is a statue. I'll just put the statue. But an Egyptian statue that says, it's governor of southern Egypt, Pharaoh Hafra. So we're talking 589 through 664. That doesn't make sense. Oh well. Anyway, it seems to suggest that on this statue that a northern army had come down, and he calls them by some weird name or whatever, but there was a northern army that came down and attacked. But he says that, you know, the Egyptian gods won favor with us and we were able to hold off this attack or whatever, which, you know, sometimes they lie, sometimes it's not sure. But 3 lines of evidence that we have now, and we didn't have any before, that Babylon did have some sort of invasion of Egypt. I'm hoping, though, because so much is dedicated to it in the Bible, that maybe more will come out later.
Yeah.
You know, at least we have something, but it is interesting. Egypt definitely fits the bill right now, for sure.
Josephus get that information then.
Well, he was a historian, he was there, so he
Josephus was there?
I mean, he was there way earlier than us, so he probably was just carrying on the oral traditions.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
probably. Since he was big into history, he probably just wrote down everything he could. But he's not always accurate. Sometimes he's a little off on things, so it's helpful that we have that inscription combined with
Yeah,
Josephus. I think is pretty good evidence.
Definitely.
So anyway, we got those 3,
Cool.
but I wonder if there's more that's going to come out later or something. So, you guys have any questions?
Modern day Dead Sea Scrolls.
Did you want us to just hand our devos in?
Ooh, Devos. No, I want you to do them. What time is it? Oh, you have time. It's a beautiful thing.
But why?
I'm just kidding.
Beautiful thing. Let's have you guys do your actions.